Hello, welcome to the channel Wise Stories. Enjoy watching.
Why don't you hand the bill to Miranda? She'll pay, declared the mother-in-law without a hint of embarrassment, having gathered all her side of the family at an expensive restaurant to celebrate her anniversary. Her son stayed silent like a fish. That's when Miranda winked at the waiter and said loudly. Miranda gazed thoughtfully out the bus window. Familiar sights of her hometown flicked past: panel-built 9-story buildings, parks littered with fallen leaves, newspaper kiosks. October had turned out damp and gray, but Miranda's mood was surprisingly bright. Today, she had been promoted at work, now the head of the sales department. A position she'd been dreaming of for the past 3 years. I really did it, thought Miranda, adjusting the collar of her coat. At 50, she looked younger than her age, a slim figure, well-groomed hair, and a carefully chosen wardrobe. Many acquaintances said she looked even better after the divorce. Maybe they were right. Life with Nicholas hadn't done her any favors. 15 years with a man who slowly drank himself into oblivion before her eyes had left a deep mark on her soul, but hadn't broken her. The bus jerked to a stop at a traffic light. A brand new car passed by, and Miranda smiled involuntarily. Just a little longer and she'd be able to buy one herself. For 5 years she had been setting aside part of her salary every month, and now her savings account looked pretty good. With her new position and the holiday bonus coming, her dream would soon become reality. Getting off at her stop, Miranda decided to pop into the grocery store. She wanted to treat herself to something delicious. I'll get some good wine, cheese, maybe even red caviar, she thought. A promotion needs to be celebrated, even if it's alone. Her son Osvaldo lived in a neighboring city, where he'd moved to attend university and stayed on after graduation. They spoke once a week, and Miranda always listened with pride to his successes in the IT company where he worked. The store wasn't crowded. Miranda picked out a bottle of semi-sweet wine, the kind that had been considered the height of luxury in her youth. She took a package of cheese, a jar of caviar, a baguette, and her favorite Jubilee cookies. The name made her smile. There were no Jubilees in her near future, and no one to celebrate with anyway. After the divorce, Miranda hadn't rushed into new relationships. In their small provincial town, the choices were slim. Most available men her age came with the same problems as her ex. Some drank, some had kids from previous marriages they still had to support, and some just wanted a housekeeper to cook and do laundry. None of that appealed to Miranda. The evening promised to be pleasant. At home, she changed into her favorite cozy loungewear, turned on her old DVD player with her favorite movie, the one she could watch endlessly, and opened the wine. She had just settled on the couch when her phone rang. "Hi, Mom," Osvaldo's voice sounded cheerful and upbeat. "Hey, sweetheart, I was just about to call you tomorrow. I've got news. I got promoted. I'm a project manager now, and they raised my salary by 30%. Congratulations." Miranda was genuinely happy. "I got promoted too today, now I'm department head. Wow, look at us. In sync. You know, maybe it's time you got that car you've been wanting. I've been thinking about it. Just a bit more saving and I'll get it in the spring. Listen, let me help. I'm getting a bonus soon." "No need, honey. You save up for your apartment. I can manage." They chatted a bit more about life, work, and their future plans. After the call, Miranda felt even more uplifted. She loved her son and was proud of the man he'd become, despite all the challenges they'd faced together. The next day at work, Miranda dove into her new responsibilities. She now managed a team of 10, prepared reports for upper management, and led planning meetings. That evening, her colleagues organized a small reception to celebrate her promotion. That's where she met Pasquale. He was a representative from a partner company, visiting for a business meeting. Tall, with distinguished silver at his temples and a well-tailored suit, Pasquale stood out from the local men. When they were introduced, he gallantly kissed her hand and offered her a glass of champagne. "To your promotion, Miranda. I'm sure you're excellent at what you do." His smile was open and welcoming. They struck up a conversation. Pasquale, it turned out, was also divorced, had no children, lived with his mother in a nearby neighborhood, and worked as a commercial director in a small trading company, frequently traveling for work. No car? Miranda asked when the conversation turned to their jobs. It just never worked out, Pasquale shrugged. First, I was saving for an apartment, then Mom needed money for treatment. Besides, public transport is more convenient for getting downtown than hunting for parking. That earned Miranda's respect. He cared for his mother and was sensible with money, not the usual type she encountered. By the end of the evening, Pasquale asked for her number. I hope you won't mind if I call you about work matters. There was a genuine interest in his eyes. Miranda hesitated only a moment. I won't, she smiled, giving him the number. He called the very next day, and not for work. He invited her to a vintage car exhibition. Miranda agreed, surprised by her own decision. Maybe it was time to give herself a chance at a new relationship. They spent almost the entire day at the exhibition. Pasquale turned out to be a great conversationalist, knowledgeable about cars, and happy to share what he knew. To Miranda's surprise, she felt comfortable around him, no pretense, no pressure, just an easy connection between two grown people. You know, Miranda, Pasquale said over tea in a cafe afterward, I think at our age, there's no point in wasting time on formalities. I really like you. Maybe we could get to know each other better. His proposal didn't catch Miranda off guard. She'd been waiting for those words, in a way. For the first time in years, she wanted to feel desired, loved, interesting to someone. Why not? She replied after a short pause. At our age, we've got enough wisdom not to make dumb mistakes. Their relationship progressed quickly. Evening walks in the park, collecting chestnuts for luck like Miranda used to do as a child, movie nights with new romantic films Pasquale endured just for her, cozy dinners either at her place or in charming little cafes playing music from their youth. Miranda even found old vinyl records and they listened to them at night, reminiscing. With each meeting, Miranda grew more attached. Pasquale was a good listener, never interrupted, genuinely cared about her thoughts and opinions. After years with Nicholas, who, by the end of their marriage, did nothing but criticize, Pasquale's kindness felt like a gift from fate. You know what your problem is, Miranda? Pasquale said one evening over dinner at her place. You work too much. Life's passing you by while you're buried in reports and spreadsheets. But I enjoy my job, she replied, serving him more mashed potatoes and cutlets. Besides, I want to stay financially independent. Of course, that's important, he nodded, chewing thoughtfully, but still, a woman should focus more on family and home. As my mom always says, a career's fine, but soup doesn't cook itself. Miranda brushed it off with a joke at the time, but the soup line scratched something inside her. Odd, after all their talks about equality and mutual respect, that he would say something so cliched. Still, it was just words. In practice, he never demanded she cook or cut back her hours. 3 months later, Pasquale began hinting he wanted to spend more time together, not just evenings and weekends. What if I moved in with you? He asked one evening while they were admiring the town square's Christmas tree. The holidays were approaching, magic was in the air. Your apartment is bigger than my room at Mom's, and it'd be easier for me to get to work. Miranda hesitated. Living together was a big step. She liked her space, her habits, her freedom. Isn't this a bit fast? She asked gently. We've only known each other 3 months. How much time do we need? Pasquale smiled warmly. A year, 2, 10? We're not kids, Miranda. What's left to learn? I like you. You seem to like me too. Living separately at our age is just wasting precious time. His reasoning made sense. After much thought, Miranda agreed. If it didn't work out, they could always go back to how it was. Living together had many nice moments. Pasquale was practical, did the shopping, could fix a leaky tap or hang a shelf. He wasn't a great cook, but happily washed dishes and took out the trash. Small domestic squabbles happened but were resolved quickly. Financially, they agreed to split rent, buy groceries as needed, and discuss big purchases together. Miranda never told Pasquale about her savings for the car, not out of mistrust, just because it felt like a personal matter. One evening over dinner, Pasquale casually mentioned his salary. "We got our bonuses today, 15,000. Nice, sure, but still not much. You probably make more than that, huh?" Miranda answered honestly. "My base is 42, plus sales commissions. On a good month, it can reach 60. Pasquale paused, as if mentally calculating something. "Not bad," he said finally. "I only get 35, plus the occasional bonus. Kinda stings, a woman earning more." "Why should it sting?" Miranda frowned. "It's a good thing when there's more money in the household. Who earns it doesn't matter, as long as we're doing fine together." "Yeah, sure," Pasquale agreed, though half-heartedly. "Just old stereotypes, maybe." After that, Miranda started noticing subtle comments about her job and salary. He'd joke she was a career woman or suggest being a department head wasn't a woman's role. But these were infrequent and mild, so she didn't take them seriously. The real challenge came when she met her mother-in-law. Maria Petrovna, a stately 65-year-old woman with perfectly coiffed hair and bright makeup, started inspecting Miranda's apartment the moment she walked in. "The wallpaper could use a refresh," she noted, eyeing the hallway, "and that carpet's clearly from your youth. They've got such lovely modern rugs at the shopping center now." Miranda bit her tongue not to remind her it was her apartment, and she'd decide what wallpaper or carpets it had. Instead, she smiled politely and invited her to the table. Over dinner, Maria Diaz talked nonstop about her son's achievements, how talented he was, how much his company valued him, how many important contracts he landed. According to her, Pasquale had practically saved the company from bankruptcy with his genius sales strategy. Miranda listened with interest. She hadn't known that side of him. He rarely talked about work or bragged. "Pasquale has always been modest," Maria said over tea and cake. "He'd never tell you how his bosses grovel at his feet. I always say to him, 'Son, ask for a raise. You do so much for them.'" At that, Miranda couldn't help herself. "Why don't you ask for a raise, Pasquale, if you're really that valuable?" Pasquale blushed slightly and shrugged. "Money doesn't buy happiness. Besides, we're doing fine for now." Maria gave him a strange look but quickly changed the subject to a TV show she'd watched the night before. When the mother-in-law left, Miranda cautiously asked Pasquale, "Is it true you've done so much for your company, like your mom says?" Pasquale waved his hand dismissively. "My mom always exaggerates. It's just a regular job, nothing special. She just wants to believe her son is some big shot." This answer reassured Miranda, although deep down, a seed of doubt was planted. How well did she really know the man she lived with? As time passed, Miranda and Pasquale's relationship settled into a routine. The passion of the first months faded, giving way to quiet cohabitation. Pasquale stayed late at work more often and spent a lot of time on his phone. Miranda also became immersed in work, the end of the fiscal year, reports, planning for the next quarter. In early spring, Miranda decided it was time to make her dream come true and buy a car. She had nearly $400,000 in her account, and with the upcoming March 8th bonus, it would be just enough for a modest but decent vehicle. She hadn't planned to discuss it with Pasquale, but at the last moment, she decided to share her plans. "I want to buy a car," she said over dinner. "I've got the money, been saving for a long time." To her surprise, Pasquale didn't seem enthusiastic. "Are you sure it's a good idea? A car is not just a purchase, there's maintenance, fuel, insurance, parking. Are you ready for those expenses?" "Of course I am," Miranda replied, surprised. "I've done the math. I can afford it, especially with my new salary." "And who's going to drive it?" Pasquale asked, watching her closely. "You only recently got your license. What if there's an accident? You know what they say about women drivers." Miranda felt her temper rise. She had spent time and money on driving school, passed her exams, and gotten her license last summer. And now Pasquale, who didn't even have a car or a license himself, was trying to talk her out of the purchase in that condescending tone. "Look," she said, trying to stay calm, "this is my money, my decision, and my future car. I didn't get my license just to leave it in a drawer. And yes, I'm fully aware of the costs and risks." Pasquale raised his hands in a peace gesture. Okay, don't get worked up. I'm just looking out for you. But if that's your decision." The next day, Miranda called her son to ask his opinion about a specific car model. Osvaldo was excited about her decision and offered to help her choose. "Mom, whose name are you going to register the car under?" he asked at the end of the call. "Mine, of course." "Who else's?" "Listen, maybe register it under me. It'd be cheaper for insurance. I've got more driving experience, so we'd get a good discount. Besides, you never know what life throws at you. What if Pasquale starts claiming rights to the car?" Miranda paused. His suggestion made sense, and not just because of insurance. After her first failed marriage, she'd become more cautious about finances, even with Pasquale. Despite their good relationship, she liked having a backup plan. "You're probably right," she agreed. "Let's register it in your name, and I'll drive it. That'll give me peace of mind." What Miranda didn't know was that Pasquale was standing in the kitchen doorway and heard the entire conversation. His face darkened, lips pressed into a thin line. He quietly stepped back into the hallway and, when Miranda finished her call, walked into the kitchen with a casual air, as if just coming back from work. "Dinner not ready yet?" he asked, peeking into the pot on the stove. "I'm starving." After that memorable conversation about the car, Miranda and Pasquale's relationship noticeably changed. Pasquale became distant, stayed late at work more often, and in the evenings sat silently in front of the TV, buried in the news. They used to enjoy discussing politics, arguing about pension reforms or utilities rate hikes. Now Pasquale replied with monosyllables. Miranda tried to figure out the reason for the shift, but all she heard was, "Everything's fine. I'm just tired." What bothered her most was that Pasquale now visited his mother more frequently. Before, he'd go once a week on Sundays. Now he spent 2 or 3 evenings there and usually came home late. He smelled of fried potatoes and pickles, Maria's signature dishes. "Mom made pies again," he'd say, pulling a towel-wrapped stack of baked goods from a bag. "Want some?" Miranda noticed that after these visits, Pasquale became particularly critical of her housekeeping. The dinner wasn't hot enough, the apartment wasn't clean, his shirts weren't ironed properly. Comparisons were inevitable. "Mom does it this way. Mom thinks that." Deep down, Miranda knew she would always lose in comparison to the perfect mom. Maria could dedicate all her time to her home and son. She didn't work, had no other concerns beyond soap operas and gossiping with neighbors. Miranda, on the other hand, spent her days managing a department, solving problems, and often continued working in the evening, checking emails and returning calls. Pasquale, she finally snapped one evening after he made a particularly snide comment about her cooking. "If something's bothering you, maybe say it outright." "What's going on?" Pasquale looked at her with a strange expression, as if weighing whether the conversation was worth starting. "Nothing much," he said at last. "I just think you could pay more attention to the house. Sometimes it feels like I live alone. You're always at work or buried in those reports." "I work so that we have money," Miranda reminded him. "And for the record, my salary makes up the bulk of our budget." That was a low blow, and she instantly regretted saying it. Pasquale's face hardened. "That's exactly what I'm talking about," he muttered. "You're always reminding me that you earn more. And now you're buying a car without me, registering it under your son's name. Why, Miranda? Don't you trust me?" So he had heard the conversation with Osvaldo after all. Miranda sighed. "It's not about trust, Pasquale. Insurance is just cheaper with Osvaldo, he's got more driving experience." Right, of course, he sneered. Just a coincidence that I won't be able to claim any rights to that car. What does that have to do with anything? Miranda snapped. I'm buying the car with my own money, for my own use. Why would you even think of claiming anything? Pasquale didn't answer. He just waved her off and walked into the other room, slamming the door. The conversation was over, but the bitter taste remained. After that incident, Miranda seriously started to wonder how well she really knew the man she lived with. Pasquale had never talked about her finances before, never criticized her career. Now, it was like he had transformed, jealous of her independence, constantly comparing her to his mother. She was so lost in thought, she missed the sound of the phone ringing. She only noticed when Pasquale called from the hallway. It's for you. Your son. Miranda rushed to pick up. Hi, Mom, Osvaldo sounded concerned. How are you? Any progress with the car? Not yet, she sighed. A few complications came up, though I have the money. What complications? Osvaldo tensed. Is it Pasquale? Miranda hesitated. She didn't want to air dirty laundry. But her son sensed her mood. Mom, he said seriously, if something's wrong, tell me. I'll come if I need to. It's okay, honey, Miranda smiled, though he couldn't see it. Just normal domestic hiccups. We're adjusting to each other, like any couple. They chatted a bit more about Osvaldo's work, his new girlfriend, the weather. Miranda mentioned she'd gotten a bonus and was close to finally buying the car. And the registration, still under my name? Osvaldo clarified. Yes, I think that's the right call, she replied. When she turned around after the call, she saw Pasquale standing in the doorway, staring at her with an unreadable expression. Almost forgot, he said after a pause. Next Saturday's Mom's birthday. She's turning 65. She's inviting us for dinner. All right, Miranda nodded. What should we get her? Maybe a dinner set? Or a household appliance? She mentioned wanting gold earrings, been dreaming of them for a while. We could split the cost, $10,000 each? Miranda looked at him, surprised. $20,000 for earrings for a woman who constantly criticized her? But she didn't argue. It was important to Pasquale to give his mother a nice gift, and for Miranda, it was a chance to show goodwill. All right, she agreed. Let's go to the jewelry store after work Saturday. When they arrived at Maria's that weekend with the gift, Miranda expected a usual family dinner, pies, salads, maybe a homemade cake. But to her surprise, Maria greeted them in full glam, new dress, bright makeup. Are we not celebrating alone? Miranda asked carefully, noticing the table was set for 6. Of course not, Maria exclaimed. It's a milestone. My cousins and their husbands are coming. My neighbor is bringing a cake. Maybe more will show up. Miranda exchanged a glance with Pasquale. He hadn't mentioned there'd be other guests. They had only budgeted for a gift from the two of them. We thought it'd be something small, Pasquale told his mother. You didn't say you were inviting the whole family. What's the big deal? Maria shrugged. Milestone birthdays only happen every 5 years. I wanted to make it special. Miranda figured that by special, Maria meant a party in her own apartment, not in a restaurant or cafe, so she wasn't too worried. She even offered to help and spent the next 2 hours in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for salads and plating appetizers. When the guests started arriving, Miranda was shocked at the lavish spread Maria served: fine cheeses, red caviar, salmon, foods Miranda only allowed herself on special occasions. Even the brandy and wine were expensive. Pasquale, I don't get it, she whispered to him in the kitchen. Your mom's on a regular pension. Where'd she get the money for all this? Pasquale looked away. I help her out every month, he admitted. I give her part of my salary. How much? Miranda asked directly. $10,000, he said after a pause. Miranda quickly did the math. Out of his $35,000 salary, Pasquale gave nearly a third to his mother and only contributed $15,000 to their shared household. She had assumed he was saving or paying off some old debt. "Why didn't you tell me this earlier?" she asked, trying to stay calm. "Was I supposed to?" Pasquale replied. "It's my money. I decide how to spend it, just like you decide where your 40-something thousand goes." It was fair, but still unpleasant. Miranda didn't push the issue. This wasn't the time or place for a fight. By 9 p.m., Maria's apartment was packed. Besides the relatives she'd mentioned, several neighbors, 2 friends from the spa, and even an ex-colleague from the post office showed up, around 15 people in all. The small 2-room apartment barely held everyone. Then, just as the appetizers were eaten and the toasts had been made, Maria suddenly stood up and announced, "Dear guests, let's continue our celebration at the restaurant. I reserved a table for 10 p.m. Miranda looked at Pasquale in surprise. He seemed just as bewildered. "Mom, you didn't say anything about this," he began. But Maria interrupted him. "It's a surprise. I wanted to delight you all. Let's get going, it's time." Everyone cheered, began gathering their bags and coats. Miranda quietly asked Pasquale, "Did you know about the restaurant?" "No," he shook his head. "First I'm hearing of it." "And who's going to pay?" Miranda whispered, feeling a rising anxiety. "It's the most expensive restaurant in the city." "Maybe Mom saved up," Pasquale guessed. "She said she'd been planning her birthday for a long time." Miranda nodded, but the uneasy feeling didn't go away. She knew Maria's pension barely exceeded $12,000, and even with her son's monthly support, saving up for a banquet at a high-end restaurant for 15 people seemed unrealistic. Maria, with an air of importance, led the way to the head seat, settled the guests, and ordered champagne for the welcome toast. Gradually, the table filled with exquisite dishes: crab, baked sturgeon, veal with truffles. The waiters kept bringing new courses without asking if anyone wanted more. Miranda noticed there were no menus on the table, and no one had ordered anything. The food just kept coming, as if following a preset plan. With each new delicacy, it became clearer that the bill would be astronomical. By nearly midnight, Maria raised her champagne glass again. "My dear ones," she said, swaying slightly, "I'm so happy you all came to celebrate with me. Thank you for the wonderful gifts, the kind words, and a special thanks to my dear son." She patted Pasquale's hand, and his generous wife Miranda, who organized this beautiful evening. Miranda choked on her champagne. "We organized it," she nearly blurted out, but managed to hold back. The guests applauded, and Maria continued, "I'm no longer young, and who knows how much time I have left. I want to go out in style, with a bang, so that everyone remembers me." She raised her glass again, but lost her balance and nearly fell. Pasquale barely managed to catch his mother. It was clear she was quite drunk, and the evening needed to end. "Maybe it's time to call it a night," Miranda suggested gently. "It's late, and Maria needs rest." The guests nodded and began to gather their things. Miranda noticed some tried to leave money for dinner, but Maria firmly pushed the bills away. No need, everything is paid for," she repeated. "Miranda took care of everything, don't worry." When the last guests left and only Miranda, Pasquale, and Maria remained at the table, a waiter approached with a black leather folder. "Excuse me, here's the bill for the evening," he said, extending it. Maria, who had been sitting with her eyes half closed, suddenly perked up. "Oh, the bill!" she exclaimed, and unsteadily pointed to Miranda. "Hand the bill to Miranda, she'll pay." A stunned silence fell over the restaurant. Miranda stared at her mother-in-law, unable to believe what she'd heard. Pasquale sat frozen, a strange blank expression on his face, no embarrassment, no objection, nothing. Only the waiter cleared his throat delicately, unsure whom to hand the bill to. "Excuse me," Miranda finally said, trying to stay calm. "Maria, are you saying you expect me to pay for your birthday celebration?" "Well, of course, dear," Her mother-in-law smiled, lips slightly slurred. You promised, didn't you, Pasquale? Miranda turned to her husband. Pasquale stared at the tablecloth as if it were the most fascinating thing in the world. I never promised anything of the sort, Miranda said firmly. In fact, this is the first I've heard about your plan to continue the party at a restaurant. Pasquale and I gave you gold earrings as a joint gift. That was our contribution. Maria winced as if from a toothache. Miranda, don't be so petty. She reached out and patted Miranda on the shoulder. You're rich, you can afford it. I'm just an old woman on a pension. What money do I have? I just wanted to celebrate my birthday in style, to show everyone that my son married a successful woman who can afford a lavish party for her mother-in-law. What's wrong with that? Every word was like a punch to the gut. Miranda felt her fingers grow cold with anger and humiliation. So she'd been used, humiliated in front of the whole family, made to look like the sponsor of someone else's party, without so much as a warning. Pasquale, she turned to her husband, did you know about this? Pasquale looked up, his eyes full of guilt and a kind of stubbornness. Not exactly, he said evasively. Mom mentioned she wanted to celebrate at a restaurant, but I thought she was going to pay. She said she had savings. What savings? Maria interrupted, you know I gave it all toward your loan 3 months ago. How many times do we have to go over this? Now it was Miranda's turn to be surprised. She hadn't heard a word about any loan. What are you talking about? She asked. Pasquale, do you have a loan? Pasquale blushed. Yeah. I borrowed a bit last year, for Mom's treatment. Nothing serious, I'm paying it off slowly. Liar, Maria suddenly said clearly, her drunkenness vanishing like magic. It wasn't for treatment, it was for your business. You lost it all, and now you're scrambling. Waiter, Miranda said, voice cold and clear, the gentleman and his mother will pay the bill. Please call me a taxi. Wait, Miranda, Pasquale grabbed her hand, let's not make a scene. I'll take out a loan, I'll pay it all, and we'll talk calmly later. A loan? Miranda pulled her hand away. You already have one loan I didn't know about. How many more secrets are there? You know what? I don't care anymore. From this moment, your debts are your problem. She turned to the waiter. The taxi, please. Quickly. While they waited for the car, Miranda avoided looking at Pasquale and his mother. Maria began wailing loudly, lamenting that her son had married a cold-hearted career woman with no respect for family values. Pasquale paced nervously between the two women, looking completely lost. When the taxi pulled up, Miranda stood and walked out without saying goodbye. The last thing she heard was Maria shouting, "Sign one paper and the debt is gone. Transfer the apartment to us both and we'll forget this ever happened." At home, Miranda didn't even unpack Pasquale's things. She shoved them into large garbage bags and left them in the hallway. She changed the locks. Thankfully, she knew someone who sent a locksmith even at that late hour for an extra fee. Then she called the district police officer and warned them about a possible conflict if her former partner tried to break in. When it was all done, she finally let herself sit in a chair and burst into tears. Pain, betrayal, humiliation, rage, it all came crashing down in one overwhelming wave. How could she have been so blind? How had she missed the signs? And what should she do now? The phone rang, making her jump. Osvaldo. "Hi, Mom," her son said cheerfully, just calling to ask how the birthday party went. Miranda wanted to lie, to say everything was fine. But she suddenly realized she couldn't keep it inside anymore. "It went badly, sweetheart," she answered quietly, "very badly." And she told him everything, the restaurant, the bill, Pasquale's reaction, her mother-in-law's demands. With every word, it felt like she was exhaling poison from her lungs. "I'm flying out on the first flight tomorrow," Osvaldo said firmly once she finished, "and don't argue. We need to sort out the documents properly in case he tries to claim anything." "Do you think it'll come to court?" Miranda asked fearfully. "I don't know, but we should be prepared. I'll take a couple days off. We'll deal with it." After hanging up, Miranda felt a wave of gratitude for her son. Even if Pasquale tried to fight for her money or property, she wouldn't be alone. An hour later, the doorbell rang. Miranda looked through the peephole. Pasquale stood there, rumpled and angry. "Open up!" he shouted as he noticed movement inside. "This is my apartment too. I lived here." "No, Pasquale," Miranda said calmly through the door, "this is my apartment. You have no legal right to it. Your things are in the bags beside you. Take them and leave." "You can't do this to me." His voice was full of genuine disbelief. "We're a family. I even have a registered address here." "Temporary registration," Miranda corrected, "and it becomes invalid once I withdraw my consent, which I'll do tomorrow at the registration office." "We could have worked it out," he persisted. "I paid the bill. Took out a loan. Now you'll have to help me repay it." Miranda shook her head, though he couldn't see it. "No, Pasquale. They're your loans, your debts, your problems. We have nothing to do with each other anymore." "Then I'll file for division of property," he shouted. "We live together. I have a right to a share." "Do what you want," Miranda replied wearily. "Just know I've got all the documents on my side. And my son arrives tomorrow. He's a lawyer." It was a small lie. Osvaldo was a programmer, not a lawyer, but Pasquale seemed to believe it. He lingered a bit longer, muttering curses, then grabbed the bags and left. The following weeks were tough. Pasquale did try to sue for division of property, claiming they lived in a common-law marriage. But he couldn't prove it. Neighbors confirmed he had moved in recently. They had no joint accounts or purchases. The case wasn't in his favor, and the lawyer Osvaldo found for Miranda quickly convinced him to withdraw the claim. Slowly, life returned to normal. Miranda threw herself into work, spending long hours at the office, taking on extra projects, partly to avoid thinking about the betrayal, partly to rebuild her savings, which had taken a hit due to the birthday fiasco. One evening, coming home from work, she ran into her neighbor, elderly teacher Alicia Torres. "How are you, Miranda?" she asked kindly. "I've been seeing you alone lately." "I'm fine, Senora Torres," Miranda smiled, "just getting used to being on my own again." "And quite right too," the neighbor nodded energetically. "Better to be alone than with just anyone. Look at the woman in apartment 45, married twice, both times to freeloaders. All she got was stress and wasted money, not an ounce more happiness." Miranda nodded. Maybe it really is better to be alone than to be so wrong about people. When she got back to her apartment, the first thing she did was turn on her phone. Osvaldo had promised to call today. He wanted to tell her about his promotion at work and share some news about his girlfriend, who, it seemed, he was planning to marry. As she prepared dinner, Miranda caught herself thinking, for the first time in a long while, that she felt calm. Yes, it was painful to realize that Pasquale had turned out to be a calculating liar. Yes, it hurt to accept that nearly a year of her life had been spent on a relationship that was false from the start. But now, she felt lighter. No more guessing, no more doubt, everything had become clear. The phone rang just as she was serving herself a salad. "Hi, Mom," Osvaldo's voice sounded excited. "I've got news. Guess what? Blanca and I have decided to get married in September." "Congratulations, sweetheart," Miranda genuinely rejoiced. "I'm so happy for you both." "And one more thing," Osvaldo continued. "Remember we talked about the car? I still want to help you. I just received my annual bonus. We can add it to your savings and get something nicer." "Thank you, but no," Miranda declined gently. "Better use that money for the wedding or furnishing the apartment. The car I chose will get me anywhere I need to go just fine." They talked for a long time about the wedding plans, work, the future. As Miranda listened to her son, she realized that despite all the setbacks in her personal life, she was truly happy. She had a job she loved, her own apartment, a good son, friends, colleagues, neighbors. She had dreams and plans. In the end, she thought, it's never too late to start over. And who knows, maybe life still has one more chance in store for me. Only next time, I'll be wiser and more careful, and I'll register the car in my name only.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.